Hi everyone, it's Mike here. Thanks for joining me for another art journal page start to finish video, and today we're looking at Journal 52's week 32 prompt, which is perspectives. Today I'm working in my Strathmore mixed media journal, which is almost complete, so much so that I've had to put a foam block underneath the page to stop it from dropping down, just to give it a bit of support while I'm working on it. And that's the black block you can see under that right hand page. So my gessoed pages are completely dry and I'm using the Dilutions. I think this is the fresh lime paint, and I'm just going to apply a coat of that with a baby wipe all across the double page spread. So as I'm adding the paint to the page, I realised that picking it up with the baby wipe on the lid was going to take forever, so I decided to get a brush and just apply a load of the paint with the brush to the page and then spread it about with a baby wipe. And the green sheet you just saw me add behind is just a piece of polypropylene plastic that I use as a page protector to make sure none of the paint goes over onto the page behind or the page in front. Because there's nothing worse than finishing a page that you're really proud of and then finding out that you've ruined the page you did previously. So now I'm just going to use a brush and apply a little bit of that paint down the crease in the centre just to make sure I don't have a white line. And now I'm going to give it a blast with my heat tool in between each colour layer just to make sure everything's nice and dry and set in place. So my second colour layer is Dilutions Cut Grass Green, which is a darker shade of green, and I'm going to create a kind of ombre effect from the bottom of the page moving up to the top of the page. So darker at the bottom, getting lighter towards the top. And I'm just going to blend that out with the baby wipe. Using a baby wipe to apply the paint to the page is such an easy way to get a brilliantly blended effect. If you're looking for an ombre effect, this is the great way to achieve it. So once I'm happy, I'm again going to get the heat tool out and give it another blast to make sure it's all nice and dry before I start adding on my next layer. And I will be using the heat tool in between each layer and each application, but I'll probably cut most of that out because it's literally watching paint dry. So next I'm going to use Distress Paint, which is the Mowed Lawn, which is another shade of green, and my new 6-inch dandelion leaves stencil, which I've recently got, and just run the paint through that using the dabber end and apply some of the leaves across the bottom of the page. And the stencil is a TCW design, that's the Crafter's Workshop. So I'm going to add a layer of these leaves across the bottom of the page with the paint, and then I'm going to hit set in between so that I can use the same section of stencil. I will be cleaning the stencil off as well in between each one. So as you can see, I'm making sure that the stencil is nice and clean and dry before I move on to the next leaf, because the last thing you want is to start smearing your paint and getting ghosting effects when you want, well, that's not the effect you're going for. Okay, so now I've applied some of the leaves with the paint. I'm now going to bring out my archival ink in Fern Green, which is another different shade of green, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing again and add in some of those dandelion leaves with the ink, this time using a piece of sponge. I think this is a makeup sponge. I don't know whether I actually swap and use a different piece of sponge halfway through this because I wasn't really happy with the effect, or it might be a bit later on. I can't remember now. I am getting old, my memory's starting to go. So I'm filling in some of those gaps with the different shade of green just to give it a little bit of more texture, and overlaying some of them. It just makes it more full and it gives it more of a realistic 3D effect, I think, anyway. There, I'm now happy with that row of dandelion leaves. So back with the cut grass paint, and I've got a fine detail brush, and I'm just going to draw in some stems for some dandelion plants. So once I'm happy with those stems, I'm going to give them a quick heat blast, and then I'm going to bring out the melted chocolate dilutions paint. So again, using the fine detail brush, I'm just going to pick up some little dabs of brown paint and just add those little points of dandelion seed heads just to the ends of the stems. Okay, so now I'm just going to grab a pair of scissors and an artist sponge. It's just a Daily Rowney artist sponge. I'm cutting into 8 pieces. I'm just going to use one to apply some titanium white paint for my dandelion heads. And this is a Reeves. I don't know whether it's a student grade or what, but it's quite inexpensive, but does the job rather nicely. So I'm just going to use the sponge and apply the white, or the titanium white, very, very loosely and very, very thinly around those seed heads to give it that kind of translucent see-through kind of look that a dandelion head has. These particular sponges do have kind of a rough texture, so it's they're great for creating clouds, sea foam and other kind of wispy items such as dandelion heads. And in a moment, this is where my OCD gets the better of me. I grab a baby wipe and white up the remaining white or titanium white paint, and then I realised that I needed it, so I had to put some fresh out. My brain was obviously on autopilot when I was doing this. So I'm just going to take some water and loosen up that white paint to get a nice runny consistency, and then I'm going to pull out my small brush again, and I'm going to add some white splatters across the green expanse across those 2 pages at the top. Now, this is the first time I've used the titanium white in the Reeves, and I was actually quite surprised at actually how thick it was and how much water I had to add to actually get it to splatter at all. So, something to bear in mind for future. I don't want to add too many of white splatters. I just want to add a hint of the white splatters across the top, just to give that impression of the dandelion heads floating above, ones that have caught the wind and have already started to float away. Now, having once wiped away the paint and then realised I needed it, you wouldn't have thought I'd do it again, would you? Well, you'd be wrong. So I'm going to give the page here a little bit of a heat blast after I've just wiped up the rest of the splatters from my craft mat, and then I'm going to bring out that melted chocolate again just to add some more definition to those little seed pods there, and then yeah, I need the white again. So my idea here is to use some of the little dandelion seed pods that are in the stencil with the sponge. Just go through the stencil with the sponge just to add some of those little heads, but it didn't really work as well as I thought it would. I think perhaps if I'd have used a small stencil brush it probably would have worked better. So we live and learn, don't we? So now the main body of my page is complete, I'm just going to use my Damo letter tag machine to print out my quote and my saying to add to my page. I love this machine. I'm definitely going to invest or research buying a different type of machine, one that you can actually load all types of different fonts on, because I think that would just be really cool. For those of us that hate our own handwriting and haven't really got that many different types of alphabet stamps, using a tag machine like this or a label machine like this is an absolute godsend. It creates tidy, neat, uniform words and texts in ways that you could never achieve yourself, unless you're a trained calligrapher, that is. And of course the other benefit to using a tag machine is that it already has self-adhesive on the back of the strip, and it is quite a strong adhesive too, so you don't have to go back over again with gel medium to make sure it's all sealed down. You can if you want, because the printing on the strips are waterproof, but you don't really need to. So there's my quote, my little saying, and I'm just going to bring out my food ball and just give that a little border all the way around, and then we are done and dusted. And all that remains for me to do is to just sign it and date it, and this is another page complete. Now normally I use a date stamp for my date, but it's playing up and not printing properly, so I'm going to do it by hand. So that's just about it for this page. I hope you've enjoyed watching this process video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up so YouTube know that you want to see more from me, and they will recommend my videos to other people too. And if you haven't subscribed already, you can do so by clicking that button at the end of the video. So once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again real soon.